The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website, and the Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. To ensure the recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings, provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. There are no members of the public present, so we need not be concerned about filming or photography without their consent. Only committee members present in the meeting room may vote. We have a number of people in attendance as virtual participants. Can I request they use the raise hand function if they wish to contribute and to introduce themselves? So I'll now formally open the meeting. The first item is apologies for absence. Councillor Woodall is attending remotely. Well, otherwise, I have no other apologies.
No apologies, Chairman, but Councillor Howling is not currently present.
That's no.
And just online, I do not be able to take part in any vote.
Thank you. We do have someone speaker on, I think. Mark, you can go on silent on your. I can't actually see him on the. Just doesn't say yes. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Name substitutes are none, and I move to declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members wish to declare any interests in the agenda item? None, thank you. Item 4, minutes. The purpose is to approve the time the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, 31st of July. The minutes of the meeting are included in the agenda for approval. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer, so are you content to assign the minutes as an accurate record? Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. Questions from members of the public? We have no questions, nor do we have any questions from councillors. So I'll move on straight to the more substantive items on the agenda. The first of which is the independent member appointments to the Governance Committee. And this is to seek members' views on the appointment of an independent member to the committee. And I will turn, if I may, to Rachel Hart, Head of Strategic Finance, to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report summarises the recommendations of the Redmond Review, which were published in September 2020, and the SIP for guidance for audit committees. And both of these publications recommend an independent member to bring additional technical expertise and experience and to improve and enhance governance arrangements. Our most recent Auditor's Annual Report, which considers the Council governance arrangements as part of the work on value for money, also included this as a recommendation under their work on our governance arrangements. And the report suggests that the committee considers the skills and experience of existing members to identify areas where they might seek to enhance through the appointment of an independent member.
Thank you. So, then whether anybody has any questions or comments on the panel? Chris?
My comment is let's get on and do it.
Okay, yeah. Anybody, any other thoughts? I think the idea of skills audit is very appropriate that we start off and find out what areas we do have skills in on the panel, and then ensure that the recruitment is orientated towards finding someone appropriate. I think it's also very important that we find someone with local authority accounting experience. That for me is the key thing. With the greatest respect to chartered accountants generally, and what we find next to me, doing audit accounts for a public company or a company is very different from doing authority. I think the area has that experience, I think, would be very helpful to us. Another thought, I think, is best practice. We need to look and see what other counties are doing when it comes to the job description, we might look at other councils to see what they do. And the other aspect, I think, is whether or not we remunerate this particular post. Again, I think we can have a look around. I think Chris is suggesting we just get on with it. So I think if we don't need any particular debate, I don't know, Mark, do you have any comments you want to make? You haven't got your hand up, so I guess not. Aubrey.
Yes, I think we ought to decide how we're going to proceed. What's the best way of proceeding to pack someone as an independent member? Do we all look around and at people we know with requisite knowledge and ask them whether they would like to stand, or do we sort of advertise it in any way? What's our best step for getting somebody to take this position? Well, I think they should be offered a small remuneration as well, but that's for the rest of the committee to decide.
Yes, Aubrey, I think the remuneration have to be decided as well by the full council.
Yeah.
So we might need to put out some feelers to find out how. One of the proposals is that you and one other member of this committee perhaps takes it a little bit further, talks about performing the recruitment and interview of the independent member. So I don't know whether I want to ask for volunteers or just see who's available at a particular time to make forward. Does anybody have a particular passion that they would like to join that group?
I'm not volunteering. I think the suggestion that we find somebody available when an appointment is made, and if I'm free, I'd be happy to come along. And I think Rachel said earlier, if I'm not right, maybe you'd like to confirm here that there is a recruitment process that you can manage to find some suitable applicants.
Yeah, that's correct, and that would be advertised with council's normal channels, and we could explore advertising that on our social media channels as well to increase the reach.
Yeah.
So the other thing would be that we very quickly did our own skills audit, so we knew where the gaps were, and then we're ready to say what gap we need to fill.
And I think personal contacts are important. They obviously shouldn't influence who actually gets the position, but Herefordshire is quite a small county, small, people get, the word gets around. So I think if anybody does know someone who's moved into the county and perhaps worked for a local authority, I think you should be interested to try to encourage them to apply. Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate that we'd follow the best practice for public appointments. That does involve us advertising to everybody to allow them to apply, but of course that doesn't stop councillors using their own networks to try to, if you know of appropriate people, to encourage them to apply for the role. Just one other point, Chair, if I may. Obviously the delegation is for this committee to select someone and then to make a recommendation, and then that would have to go back to full council for them to actually appoint the person and any other terms that you may deem as appropriate for that appointment. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Frank.
Well, can I just ask that means that it's the employment panel that it would effectively employ the person? Is that what you're saying, Sean? It's through your chest. It's an appointment to one of the committees, and that's a full council appointment. So if you remember at the start of the year, the full council appointed councillors to all the various committees. That body makes the same appointments. So it would be a full council meeting. Going forward, of course, then that role, that appointment can be done the same time as other members are appointed to the various committees. So it's only this one-off that we'd have a special meeting, so to speak.
Yes, right.
So the other question then is, guy's appointed, the guy, or having not appointed, the person is appointed, comes on the committee. Well, can you tell me what authority they then have?
I think that is something which we need to work out. Perhaps a smaller group will look at it. I think the conversations I've had previously indicate it's a bit fuzzy at the moment in the Constitution. It's neither one thing nor the other. and we might want to look at best practice. And I mean, my thinking is that we don't have a vote, that it gives them much more freedom to participate without enormous risk to themselves. But we'll look at best practice, sure.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so if they're appointed, they have the same authority as any other member of this committee, so it would increase to 8. The Constitution as currently drafted restricts their voting. It does grant them a right to vote on certain matters, and these are usually advisory matters where you are passing a recommendation that goes to another body for them to adopt. They can't vote on anything which has been delegated to this body to discharge on behalf of the council. So to adopt a plan or to sign off on a particular strategy, that type of thing, they cannot vote in that regard. Other authorities restrict voting completely. So most of the other authorities don't have the independent person voting at all. As the chair mentioned, it gives them the free rein to say to kind of give their full views, and they can take part because they know actually they're not going to vote on that particular matter. But again, that could be a recommendation back from this committee back to full council. So if you feel that that is appropriate, you could suggest that, and it would be up to full council to decide whether or not to adopt it or not.
Okay. So the recommendation is, first of all, the committee note the information provided on the appointment of the independent member to the audit committee. B, the committee consider the skills and experience required of an independent member, and by that we mean a skills audit, which I think actually you'll be instigating that. And then nominates the chair, so the chair and deputy chair, and then one other member to perform the recruitment and interview with the assistance of the appropriate officers for the recruitment. And then delegates those members of the committee authority to make recommendations to full council to appoint the independent member. But I think as a matter of good practice, we pass that recommendations through this committee anyway, as an update if anything else. Sure, is that fair enough?
It's not required from the recommendation, Chair, but you're free to kind of amend if you prefer that to be the case.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to keep everybody up to date, just as a meeting to meeting. Thank you. So shall I move on to item 8, financial statements all in progress. Pete Barber has, it says Pete here, I hope that's right. Pete Barber has joining us remotely.
So I'm terribly sorry, Chair, just before I go, I take it the panel did all vote on that matter and we were all happy with that?
Sorry, yes, did everybody in favour of that?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ben.
Keep us on traction.
Yeah. Okay. So Rachel, do you want to introduce this next item? And Pete, you are there, are you? Yes, I can see you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. So item 8 on your agenda is our progress report, setting out progress against our 2 responsibilities for 23-24. That's an opinion on your financial statements and the conclusion. I will take the report as read, but the summary is set out on one, two.
A little bit difficult. It's not a very good signal, Pete, actually.
Is that any better? I'm a bit louder.
I think so, yes, thank you. I'll give it a
And maybe it's not a little bit too much. But yeah, thank you, Chair. So this item 8 on your agenda is our progress report that sets out the position for 22-23 against our 2 areas of responsibility, the opinion on your financial statements and the
Pete, we can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me at all now?
Well, that's saying I tell you what, I'm going to ask Rachel to introduce the subject, and then if you wanted just to add anything to that, we'll go that way around. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. So this report outlines the audit progress on our financial statements for the year ended 31st of March 2023. We brought to the committee in the last meeting the statutory accounts that were published by the statutory deadline of the 31st of May, and we were one of 30% of councils that achieved that deadline this year. The statutory audit started on the 3rd of July, performed by Grant Thornton and their team, and the council finance team has worked very hard over the summer to provide high quality working papers and to respond to audit requests through the provision of evidence over the last couple of months. The audit team has made significant progress to date, and it's worth noting that no material errors in the statements have been found and a substantial amount of work has been completed. However, there have been a number of challenges within the audit team, including sickness absence, resourcing challenges, and the training and experience of some of the junior members of their team. And as a result, the audit opinion has not been finalised, and we are now unable to make the statutory deadline for audit opinion of the 30th of September as originally planned.
Thank you, Rachel. Peter, I don't know, you want to try again?
Yes, Chair. I'm not sure if that's any better. I've got my headphones.
Oh, yes, really good. Yeah.
Apologies, I probably should have put these on originally, but thank you, Rachel, for articulating the position. I suppose there's not much I really want to add in relation to the opinion element of our responsibilities. I think it's important to say that we are disappointed that we've not got to the position that we hope to be, and that we set out in our plan that came to committee in June. The challenges are exclusively on our side, and it is important to put on record that, as Rachel outlined, the cooperation from the council's finance officers has been excellent and continues to be so, and it is regretful that we do continue to have to engage with them and take up more of their valuable time over the next few weeks to try to get this work over the line. You will see that in the progress report within the appendices there is a couple of pages on the completion of audits in previous years across local government, and you can see a decline in the percentage of audits that do meet the national deadline, which is incredibly tight. As Rachel said, the deadline for issuing the opinion is Friday, the end of September, and I'll be very surprised if more than a few percent of councils get their accounts signed off by that time. We continue to be committed to working with Rachel and the team to complete this work as soon as possible and sign off in October. So there is a meeting of this committee, I think, on the 24th of October, and it is our intention to bring the audit findings report to that committee and sign off after that. And that will then hopefully conclude the opinion. And also importantly, and committee members will be aware of this from the previous meeting where I presented the auditor's annual report on VFM for 21-22. The VFM work is also now underway, and that is working to a deadline of the end of the year. So our aspiration is that by Christmas, both the opinion and VFM conclusion have been issued. And also, just to confirm what Rachel said, that the work to date is well progressed on the opinion, and importantly, we have not identified any material errors or uncertainties to date, and that provides, in my view, you, as those charged with governance, with assurance that the council does have arrangements in place for producing complete, accurate and timely financial statements.
So you're now saying that the 24th of October is, we haven't used the word definite, but what are your feelings that you had staffing issues? Do you think how confident are you you're going to have these? Because obviously they need to be circulated 7 days beforehand, 5 working days, whatever. So
yes, and it's a good challenge, Chair. And as I said, my aspiration is that the audit findings report is a complete one. Invariably, there is always final bits to resolve, and our commitment is to ensure that audit findings report is as complete as possible and provides you with as much assurance as possible, recognising that inevitably there is always bits of work that happen between issuing that report for papers and actually attending committee, and I will be not least given the experience just now in terms of you being able to hear me. I will be attending in person on the 24th of October to present that, and if there are any outstanding points at the point of drafting that report, clearly I would hope to be in a position to verbally update you on those at the meeting on the 24th and sign off there afterwards. The reference to definitely, the experience of the last 2 months has shown me that there is always a risk to completion as a result of unavoidable positions where people do unfortunately go off with sickness. I think I've probably explained to committee before and many other committees in local government that there isn't a contingency that are just sitting there waiting to pick up work if we have sickness issues. Our whole team in the Southwest is fully deployed on audits and will be for some time. All we can do is continue to commit to working with the people we have to progress the work as quickly as possible and conclude this audit.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
Yes. I'd like to make a formal thing on record that I'm personally quite unhappy that not only your audit is not ready on time, and I sympathise with your sickness problems, but generally speaking throughout the country this seems to be a standard situation, and this council, I believe, doesn't have any comeback on that. I'm informed that it's not like a normal contract that we place with you. There's no penalty for you failing to meet the terms of the contract, not to us anyway. Maybe you can tell us if you suffer any penalty to anybody else. I think the appointment is done through the PSSA, is it? And those are the people responsible, and we don't have a say in this. Our council officers have worked incredibly hard to meet their deadlines and have done so. And it's a disappointment to me that not only are you unable to meet your deadline, but we don't have any comeback on that. So sympathy, yes, but as a council, I think we need to find a better way of managing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Do you want to respond to that, Keith?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So it's a valid criticism. I think it's probably important to explain that our contract to undertake the work as the external auditor at Herefordshire Council, the contract is not with the council itself. It's with, as the councillor mentioned, it's with public sector audit appointments, and that contract that we have is heavily vested in terms of quality and timeliness. So we are held to account by public sector audited appointments and have regular meetings with them, as do the other firms. And I would say this one side that yes, I recognise the delay in a large number of audits. But Grant Thornton has consistently outperformed every other firm within the market in terms of timeliness of accounts, but it doesn't detract from you missing that deadline. And clearly the ramifications for us in not meeting deadlines are that is factored into future tendering processes, that when ourselves and other firms bid for work from public sector audit appointments, they have regard to our past record of performance, and that does influence appointments. And clearly, ultimately, councils do periodically, because the PSA contract is every 5 years, do have the option to opt out, and should they wish to do so, could and do on occasion, not many, but there are councils that do go out and appoint independently their own external auditors, and clearly that brings benefits in terms of that specific holding to account, but also involves a number of risks as well as the bureaucracy involved. So I can give you assurances that the PSA just don't step back. They do actively manage delivery and work with us to help deliver timely audits, but recognise the wider challenge in the sector, which is the ability of all firms to recruit people with the right skills to undertake this work, and that is the problem that we have. All I would say is Herefordshire is in the first tranche of our work. We did prioritise you, and you will have your accounts signed off significantly ahead of the majority of our local government clients. And the sooner I get Herefordshire done, the sooner I can move on to some of my others and seek to get those concluded.
One just supplementary question. If a council goes independent on this and opts out of the PSAA system, do you tender for the accountancy work for audits for those outside the system?
We have done in the past. We've so I think from memory there were just over 500 councils, stroke fire authorities, police authorities, pension funds, etc. That require an audit. I think all bar about 10 opted in to PSAA 5 years ago, and we did pick up a number of the 10 that went out individually. Those included Cornwall Council, the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall Pension Fund, and interestingly, those 3 councils did opt back in the last round a year and a half ago, and I think it's even less than 10 now. But we do go for some of them on a selective basis if those are audits that we will wish to take up. However, we have more than enough work, and we are not looking really to undertake and apply for audits or tender for audits that are being advertised internally going forward.
Pete, we've had a communication from the PSAA suggesting that they're looking at increasing the fees for next year by 151%. I did think that was some sort of typo, actually, 51%, but no, it's 151%, so it's a substantial increase. I mean, I assume you're aware of this proposal?
Yes, we are, and clearly that reflects the huge change in the quantum of work required to discharge our role since the last tender was let 5 years ago. So if I look at what we have to do now to get our work over the line compared to 5 years ago, it's fundamentally different, and that's been actually reflected already in the fees that you've been paying in part over the last few years. So you'll have seen in the plan that I brought in June, you will see again in the audit findings report I bring in October, that the fee that you end up paying is the scale fee, which was the starting point 6-7 years ago, plus all the incremental increases that have been driven by increases in regulation, higher expectations, and also the VFM changes. The new VFM code has brought in massive increases in workload. So you are paying significantly above what the initial contract was 5 years ago. So you will see a further increase, but it won't be the actual fee you pay in, for example, 23-24 times 151%. It will be something less than that, but nonetheless, it will be a substantial increase in fees. And that really just reflects supply and demand and the additional costs for firms to discharge their role.
Do you think that as a result of the increase, we will get the accounts completed on a more timely basis?
My personal reflection is that there is that unless there is a change to the current requirements in terms of the audit procedures we need to undertake, I'll be surprised if there is any short-term improvement in delivery. There are noises in the system as to whether a new code should be introduced within the public sector that places less emphasis on some of the very, very detailed work we have to do around things like the valuation of land and buildings, investment properties, but also the pension fund. That takes up a huge amount of our total inputs, and there is questions being asked as to whether the level of challenge we place on that valuation by councils and their valuers is appropriate, and is it as critical to get those valuations exactly right and materially accurate within a council where those assets will be invariably used to provide continuation of service and are unlikely to be disposed of, versus a private company down the road that have to have them valued, and that valuation may impact on their ability to borrow from the bank or give a return to shareholders. And I very much hope, and I think as a firm, we hope that that is reflected in a new code that may come in the future and will reduce our workload and inevitably impact on the amount of support that we require from your finance officers and the timing and the completion of those audits.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, to follow up on that point as well, which I was going to add on later, there are things that are valued that seem just a waste of time and money to actually be valuing them and looking at risk factors. Things like roads, things like buildings that we can never sell because they're owned by us. Their value is a very arbitrary figure. The Shire Hall, for example, how can you value that? And the amount of money we're spending to have an audit team look at that and valuers who look at that does seem to be wasted money, in my opinion.
I think we end up writing to the SAA and perhaps the Secretary of State or whatever, we can join in that lobbying to say, you shouldn't take these elements out of the audit. I think we'd have your support for that sort of approach. Any other agree?
Thank you, Chair. As it's regarding the value for money statement, is that a new requirement for 2020? Is that due and going to be on time?
Apologies, because I'm not sure I picked up all of that question. I picked up the gist of it, which is value for money, and the value for money work. You will be aware that last year we brought that to this committee a number of months ago, and as explained in my introduction, the value for money work is already underway, and we are working to a much tighter deadline of the end of this year, calendar year, to get that complete. So we are very hopeful that you will receive a more timely report than you have received in previous years.
Yeah.
Yes. And does that value for money statement include looking at the Balfour BT Living Places contract?
I don't know. It's being undertaken by value for money colleagues, and it is based on a risk assessment of the areas that we think we need to do deep dives on. Clearly, the Balfour BT contract has been referenced in a number of different areas within prior year VFM reports, and any subsequent VFM report will have regard to prior year recommendations and a commentary on progress against implementing those recommendations.
Rachel, Andrew, I really wanted to provide a committee with a bit of history on the value for money for BBLP.
So we're working with Pete's colleagues at the moment, and part of their work is to follow up on all previous recommendations and management actions that we committed to as a result of those recommendations. The last annual auditor's report, the value for money conclusion, came to this committee in June. So we're working with Pete's team now, and we're providing progress updates, and they will determine whether that delivery of those actions is satisfactory across their three themes. The value for money audit looks at our governance arrangements, which include contract management, our financial sustainability, and the 3 E's, which are economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in our use of resources. So within all of that work, there will be some follow-up and some new work aligned to the risks that they've identified for this financial year.
Any more questions, Frank?
So could I ask Pete, I think last time when you were talking to us, you mentioned that some of the work went out to India, but I just double checking in my own mind, is any of the work that carried out by yourself subcontracted? Well, I'll ask that question, and then if you say yes, I can ask another question.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So yes, an element of our work is undertaken and resourced from India. It varies on audit to audit, but in Herefordshire for this year, for the opinion, a large element of the work is resourced from India. It is not subcontracted out because they are Grant Thornton employees in India. So they are employed by Grant Thornton LLP, but they are based in India. There is one member of the team below the manager that is Bristol based, and the rest are India based. So myself and Roz as the manager, we both work out of Bristol, as does Elmer, and the rest of the team, the other 3 individuals, or well, it's 2 now, who are engaged in the audit are India based.
So nothing is subcontracted effectively because everything's under Grant Thornton, is that right?
Yeah, and that's a deliberate decision given the issue around data protection, and there are additional controls put in place, and there is a separate access portal used by India colleagues working on UK local government to ensure that all the data protection confidentiality elements of that are achieved and met, and actually all the storage of all the files and databases are UK based.
I think.
Can I ask a kind of a general question, a bit of an observation as well? Looking at the Redmond report, it says, for instance, in England, neither the financial nor the value for money audit includes a specific responsibility to provide an opinion on whether a local authority is financially sustainable. So at the moment, I'm sure members of the public think that the audit comes in and they should, if there's a problem, as there is in Birmingham, Woking, Thurrock, you'd expect the auditors to go in and identify that, but it strikes me that that's not part of the role. Particularly, you're looking at the systems and looking at the systems in place, but you're not deciding if the local authority is financially sustainable. If the rules were to be changed so that you as auditors had to do that, presumably that would be a substantial increase in your work, and it might even be that you wouldn't be prepared to do it. So appreciate your observation. Because with the fee going up by 150%, I'm thinking, well, there ought to be a step change. So you're moving from one type of audit to an audit which then does provide some sort of assessment about financial sustainability, which is what the public probably would be expecting us to be paying for. Answer on a postcard, please.
Yeah, I think that the suggestion that the financial sustainability of a council is not commented on by an auditor is not strictly correct. Whether we give an opinion on that, probably not, but I think within both elements of our responsibilities, we absolutely can cover that off. In relation to the opinion on the accounts, clearly going concern is an accounting concept that the council has to decide whether it is appropriate to adopt, and in signing off your accounts, we are auditing and making a judgment as to whether we concur with the default approach by councils, which is that they prepare accounts on the going concern assumption. So we absolutely do that every year to say whether you're a going concern. Now, going concern really is all about the ability of the entity to continue in operation for the 12-month period following the audit of the account. So it is quite a short-term viewpoint, but nonetheless does provide in the taxpayer with a view as to the sustainability of the council. I think the VFM work absolutely does give us the opportunity to comment on the sustainability of the council, the financial sustainability. As Rachel mentioned, one of the 3 areas that we look at is financial sustainability. And if there significant concerns about the sustainability of a council, the auditor has a number of options open to him or her in terms of reporting those concerns. They could be that they conclude that there are weaknesses in arrangements to ensure financial sustainability, and they could say that as part of their VFM conclusion that they don't think the council's got arrangements in place, and issue a key recommendation, which has happened at a number and an increasing number of councils over recent years. And if they are even more concerned about the financial sustainability, and you've mentioned one of a number of high profile councils that have recently been hit the press in terms of their financial challenges, they could issue a statutory recommendation. And I'm led to believe that one such recommendation will be issued to supplement ones already issued at the council you referred to earlier. So those statutory recommendations are quite powerful and require the council to formally respond within a set period of time to the concerns raised by the auditor to provide assurances on what action they are taking to address the concerns.
Thank you, Peter. I think that gives me a bit more comfort than I had before. Robert, you
I'd
may
like to chase up on that. It was a very good question. And so the question is, did those statutory recommendations get made before Birmingham Council collapsed, or Thurrock, or whichever ones you were dealing with, before it got to the point of no return?
So Birmingham is our audit, but I must admit it's not mine, and I'm not exactly cited on the timings. But there is, I think, a lot of helpful information in those statutory recommendations that are useful for other councils to have regard to. So one thing I could suggest is that Grant Thornton did do a report called The Learning from Statutory Recommendations and Public Interest Reports, because public interest reports are another example of intervention from auditors when they have particular concerns at a council, the most serious types of concerns. And we did a report that sets out some of those councils and why they found themselves in that position and the potential learning going forward. And I think that might be an interesting read for members of this committee, and for that matter, members generally. It's quite a succinct report, but it gives you a good in-depth reason into why some of these issues arose, and invariably they're relationship driven.
Thanks, Pete. You take that on board, Rachel. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you for following that up, Robert. I don't see any further questions from anybody. So I think thank you, Pete, for coming and talking to us, and we look forward to providing you with a suitable pen for the meeting in October next month. Yeah, thank you. You've assured us as much as you can it's going to be delivered, and yeah, we'll see what we can do. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
For the sake of the record, so the recommendation is that we know the progress of the external audit, be it 31st of March 2023, and perhaps look forward to receiving the accounts in the next meeting. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Pete. So we move on then to Ash Dieback and Bruce Evans. We'll talk about a quarter of an hour, Bruce. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Would you like me to just go straight into the presentation and go through it?
Yes, I think so, Bruce. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen. Is that showing okay to everyone?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks for the time. I think we were asked a question, which goes back to the previous committee, about assurance about what we're doing about Ash Dieback, how we're dealing with it, what do we know, what don't we know, those sort of things that come into building a plan. And wanted to know whether we've got something adopted and scrutinised those plans to ensure the risk of the onset of Ash Dieback within the county is dealt with appropriately. Risks known about Ash Dieback, so it's just really what this presentation aims to do is really just to set the scene and also to go through some of the things we're doing at the moment, getting through approvals, getting plans in place, and also how we're dealing with the situation as it arises. So ash dieback has been in the county reported since about 2014, the odd tree that's growing. Don't mean to pan with trees and growing and stuff like that, but it is expanding, and there are things that are happening on the network that we need to plan for and take stock. So ash dieback, I wouldn't try and attempt to the Latin for what it is. It's destroying the trees across the old county country. It's expanded from abroad. It started down from the southeast coming across. We're not as badly hit as other authorities, though we're starting to show signs now we're coming through. We're probably, I think, Gloucester's more hit than us. Worcester's probably the same. Shropshire building a plan as well, the same as ourselves. So starting in 2006 has been described infection and disease. We started this in the county 2016. We've done a number of surveys. We know what's out there. What we don't really know is the exact number, the location, and the potential condition. It's what we know at the moment is there's potentially about 100,000 ash trees adjacent to the road, public realm, that could impact on the network, and probably about 95% of those are within our ownership. So public realm is covered in a number of different ways. We've got open spaces. We've got what we manage and own as part of the Highway Authority, which is the verges. Then we've got schools and other properties and commons as well. Adjacent to highway, we've obviously got in trees and boundaries adjacent to boundaries that could impact on the highway. And if they do fall, the impact could be severe. So it's fallen limbs, trees, risk to life, property and infrastructure damage that we've seen on other dead, dying, diseased trees. It's not just ash dieback that impacts. All sorts of different diseases can impact on the trees. This is just one about the different types of categories within it. The easiest one to show really is the pictures, and I'll describe them really. We've got the category ones, which are in here, which are healthy trees. Good coverage of leaf, minor signs of disease, if there's anything on that. Then we go to stage 2, which then starts showing signs. 3/4 of it covered in leaf, and then the crown densities changes and some leaf browning, which when we go to then start getting into where we need to consider action in, which is the stage 3s, which are really showing 50% of leaf coverage. And then we go down to stage 4, which is the one at the end here, which clearly that's dead. We need to do something about it. The key thing is really we can only see this in the summer months. Otherwise, we get through the autumn and then basically leaf fall detracts from that. So what we're doing as a council, it's where I am. I'm with part of the public realm within the client to the highway side of it. We're linked in with the conservation team. It's all through E&E that basically then you've got the schools, property and everything else. So across the board through the council, we've got that network of what we own, what we do. Conservation team are leading in coming across with a key, with a county tree strategy. That's an overarching strategy for how we implement. That's progressing. It's been drafted, and the aim for that one is to be completed as a document in draft by Christmas, but we're planning that it'll be implemented and approved by the end of the financial year. So beginning in March, end of March 23-24, it'll be an approved document and policy. Sitting underneath that will be a number of documents. Primarily the one that's of interest to this is really the ash dieback action plan, and that will be really setting out the scenes, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then taking it to the level of really what do we take out, what do we leave. Building on that will be in line with that will be a big comms plan. What we need to do is get out to the message of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and also private landowners, they're aware of it. And if it is impacting on the highway, how do we approach those and deal with that element of it? So that's quite fundamental in really the building block of really what we do with ash dieback. We've also got we've got works to trees covered by TPOs, which is an element there with ash dieback. TPOs are quite important in how we do this, but we've also in that we've got to recognise really what they stand for. But if they're into stage 4, it's a given really that we need to manage that risk. Stage 3, we need to sort of identify what that risk is and really plan to remove that risk at the appropriate time. Stage 2 is really the monitoring. We know there's an issue there. Stage 1 is we know that we've got the ash tree plan plotted, we know where it is, and basically the inspections can go from that. The other thing we've got in place is really with planning applications, conservation team are actually reporting on ash trees. That's an ongoing thing we're doing at the moment. So basically through the plan application, through the assessments, we're reporting, responding to plan applications. We're also, with this, we've got a lot of working groups. So we're benchmarking with one of those is with local authorities across the board. There's an ash dieback working group, which is setting best practice, learning from each other, what people are doing, if people have got queries, questions, and how we manage things. It's a forum to really get that across the board and learn from it. We haven't had that many issues that we've brought to the table, but we've taken a lot of stuff away where we're learning from. So we've also got DEFRA, and it's just working with partners, neighbouring authorities, that we can actually get sort of a good understanding what's happening, how we're impacting, what we're doing, and how they're managing themselves. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just learning best practice from other people. Council properties another one, but that's monitoring, that's surveys going on in place. The public realm is one that's, because of the vast area of it, we've do all the surveys of market towns and city in the open spaces. What we haven't done in the past is go out there and proactively survey with arboriculturists that will know what types of tree they are, where they are. We've started doing that. We've got about 30 to 40% coverage on the A's and B roads, which are the high risk ones for high traffic, high volumes, high speed of roads. We're expanding that to a more surveyed approach and getting that to a known place. To complement that, with all the roads are inspected annually, and part of the inspection regime that we do as part of the highways maintenance plan, we inspect hedge to hedge, and also outside that of anything that would impact on the network. That's been how we've been identifying the risk out there at the moment, and we continue to do that. And that's through the public realm contract. We've been actually removing the risk as needed, pollarding as needed, but identifying where there's issues of concern. And we've also been notifying adjacent landowners if there is a problem, that it's in their ownership, their risks, and what they need to do. So those are the actions that are continuing as we speak, and those are what we're planning to do. Managing the risk going forward, as I said, sorry, probably repeating stuff on this, but annual tree surveys, expanding that through the annual plan, making sure we've got good surveys of all the known. We're not going to know from day one because the network covers 3,000 kilometres of highway. That's A, B, C's and U's. We've also got 3,000 kilometres of public rights of way out there. So it's a vast area. So it's looking at those high risk areas. Again, it comes into the baseline. We're doing the monthly annual inspections. So they're broken down to types of road, A and B roads monthly, some C's are monthly, then lower class roads annually. But what we're doing next financial year and the year after is expanding on the arboriculturist work in actually surveying, spot marking what are ash trees, so we can actually just really get those plotted on mapping using GIS. We're doing that across the county wide as well as what's known, and that's with property and everyone else. So it's really what we've got in place for how we manage our highways is a baseline of what we're doing for the known and reactive. What we're expanding to is getting more proactive with the surveys, and if there are any doubts with what needs to be done, we're bringing in the specialist consultants to support. And in that, we've got a core of tree surgeons that can actually come out there and support what we do and how we do it. which is removing the risk. The project is really removing, what we need to do is to remove that risk from the network, and in that, probably coming on to the next stage, is we've secured funding through the capital programme that we can actually support it. In that, we're resourcing the helping resource conservation team, because we need the tree expertise within the council to go out there, manage, support the teams who are removing it. And what we don't want to get into is where some people get, or some authorities are being criticised for being risk averse and removing all the ash trees. It's only when they become a certain risk that we need to do it. There's an added benefit in doing that is we've not got massive amounts to go out there and remove the trees. We've got to do a planned programme approach. In that, we've got a 4-year programme of funding to get rid of to top up and get rid of the problems in the known council area. So it's not just public realm, it's also supporting conservation, not conservation, the commons and council owned properties. Doing the comms plan is big. We need to do that. We need to get people to know their problems, to identify ash, and also to, when we start knocking on the door and they've got problems with it, we need them to be aware of what's going on and be responsive to it. Ultimately, there may be enforcement we need to do, but we need to plot that out, and that's part of the action plan that will be coming through the policy documents. I suppose out of scope, we won't be going out intervening on private unless we have to, unless there's real risk to life and there's not a response to what we plan to do. And notification, we currently notify the public if there is private trees at a risk to the highway. We will follow that process in notifying and taking action through legal if need be. Key to it, so this final slide, so it's really the recovery plan is what does that look like? So removing all the ash trees. So if we went out and removed all the 100,000 odd ash trees, there'd be a big gap in what we do with tree cover. So what part of the ash dieback action plan will be that recovery plan with it. So what do we do with replanting? From a highway perspective, it'd be the right tree in the right location, and it would also be trying to encourage what we do with the private ownership trees. We've been doing a lot with biodiversity net gain recently. It's really how we expand that and getting more trees, more tree coverage, and backfilling really the loss of trees. And the big thing we're doing at the moment, which we'll continue to do, is just monitoring, information sharing, delegated council to support the ash dieback plan. And basically, we need to really update and keep the corporate risk register updated. The emphasis really, we've got to emphasize really the comms plan, what we do on our website, what we put on there to inform the public what we're doing. And that's the presentation. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yes, that's usual today. Again, thank you for that. First question, is there funding for the recovery plan?
We've got, as part of what we've secured within the capital programme, an element of that would be the recovery plan. What we haven't got is really what that looks like until we start knowing what those trees are, what we're removing, and we need to compensate. So what the plan would be sort of in year is having a plan of what we do for reactive and recovery. So it's at the moment it's going through the governance. So it's almost talking about, do we put 1, 2, 3 trees back for one tree sort of thing in a different location, a different place? That plan's going to be coming from that tree policy. But go back to your question, sorry, the funding will be in that 4-year plan. And then what we need to be wary of that in reporting back on the spend is really if things do deteriorate to such a degree, we may need to come back and reevaluate what the funding that we need. But it's at the moment we envisage we can do it within the funding we've got.
Okay, just for the purposes of this committee, I'm really concerned about the risk going forward of large bills that we haven't foreseen. And if my son's experience with his own land is anything to go by, there may well be. And the final, very short question is, who is our tree expert in the council?
We've got a number in the conservation team. Liz Dewberry leads a team up there. Ollie is the tree professional at the moment. I can't think of his second name now, but he works under Liz Dewberry. Let me just find his...
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Mark, you have a question from.
Thank you. Yes, can you hear me okay? I'm getting very patchy reception at the moment.
We hear you going, you on or off. Do you want to try again?
So I've got headset on, so it was the question is, if you can hear me, Bruce, is that thank you for going to happen with building a capability in the council for providing a service. Has that worked at all or not?
Sorry, Councillor, didn't quite hear that.
Okay, I'll give it another go and then I'll lower my hand if it freezes again. Will we be building our own capability in the council for ongoing removal of these trees, since it's going to be a long-term project? And if we do build our own capacity, will we be able to sell that to the public, or at least provide some sort of service to the public which could help fund it?
Thank you, Councillor. I got that. We've got a project at the moment, the future operator model for what we look like for the public realm contract. In that, we'll be looking at what needs to be for the service. As part of that, we're putting out there what we need for tree surgeons. At the moment, within the public realm contract, they've got a small team of resource that's complemented by the local contractors. We'll probably keep that model going. And what we're also doing on the side of it is getting some going out to tender for a framework contract that these other contractors could come on, that we can call on as and when needed. So once we've got that framework, we could potentially expand that to offering that service out to people once we've identified out. I think that would be a good idea, because at the end of the day, is a lot of these people out there probably need that support if it's on private ownership. And it's not sort of like, we wouldn't want to say, there you go, you got to go and start removing it. We need to start signposting people into the right direction of what we can do and support them with it. Not obviously subsidize it, but obviously point them in the right direction. And maybe it's a case that we could secure what those rates are for it. But that's a future coming down the line of, I'll put the efforts really into what we're doing with a future operating model that probably would secure that framework around that people can call on if need be. Almost like a better version of almost like the community commissioner model, that basically if there's a need out, they could be identified, they could come in and resource, or they could find their own, because it's obviously there's other people around that can do it. And there's a lot of local with tree surgeons and everyone else that could also do the service. It's going to be a specialised one, but there's going to be a lot of demand over the future years. And you're right, it is a case it's going to go beyond the 4 years we see. It's really that we've got 4 years foresight. So it's almost, we've got the annual plan, we've got the forward programme, and it's going to be continuously updating that as to the need we need to support.
Bruce, any other questions? Yes, Audit.
Thank you. I know that for the 4 years, the additional budget noted down here is 367,000 per annum. Has that been approved, and is that available? And does that cover all work on removing trees and replacing them?
That's going through governance at the moment, so it will be approved. We've gone through finance. The finance approval is just getting that final governance signed off that basically we can invest that. We're looking at the route to market, how we deliver the actual service. So basically the identification of where the ash trees are condition is really how we then commission to do that work. We've got the public realm contract that does a service. They've almost been doing that as a baseline anyway at the moment. This is really to the additional funding is there to really cater for that expanding demand, if you like, on the network to remove that risk. So the plans will be developed, and it'll be shortly in the programme to start that process. And then once you've got that in place, that will streamline for the 4 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There we go.
Chair, just to clarify on the position, in the capital programme that's agreed in February were the 4 years of the funding for this work. So Council has already agreed a 4-year programme.
So this report is really just for noting. I just wonder whether anybody thought we should agree any particular actions, or whether we accept the assessment that's here, and we just watch for the road appears on the risk register going forward, with steps in mitigation will be put in there, and see what the scoring comes out at. Rachel, is that I'm feeling my way a little bit as to what our conclusion might be. So then we review it in the risk register anyway, don't we?
Bruce has got his hand up.
Bruce.
Yeah,
Yes.
so sorry, I think I don't want to preempt anything what you're going to say, but I suppose we've got a timeline up to the end of the financial year of what we've got to do and get it approved and get in place like the tree policy and everything else. If so, Wish, when you come through and you see the risk register, if you want us to come back and brief you and update, more than willing to do that.
Yeah, well, it depends on where it appears on the risk register, really. If it's really highly rated, we might want you to come back or be satisfied that the administration is dealing with it appropriately. But it's very much an action thing rather than the process. So we've seen the process, it looks at the process is fine. And if that's followed through and the auditors come in and they're satisfied that it's being looked at, and as we drive around the county, we see trees being taken down from time to time, we're quite satisfied. But it is a matter of where it appears on the risk register, I think. So Bruce, thank you for your offer. We might take you up on that, we might not. Thank you for such a comprehensive report. Good. And anything else on that? No, we move on then. I mentioned, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Bye.
We talked a little about risk, and or we mentioned an additional risk that we might need to have a little bit of consideration for relating to the demise in Birmingham. Aubrey, we going to?
Yes, it occurred to me that if there was equal pay, back pay required in Birmingham, could it be the same in Herefordshire, given that women in the jobs they were doing were traditionally underpaid compared to men, as they stayed back in Herefordshire?
Andrew, I wonder whether you can give us what assurance you might be able to on this.
Chair, I'm very happy to. We have a very different arrangement in Herefordshire than Birmingham does, and there's quite a different structural arrangement to how the majority of staff are employed. So Birmingham tend to directly employ all of their workforce. Herefordshire has for an awful long time an outsourced model. So the people that collect the bins in Birmingham are direct employees, are outsourced here. People who provide care, provide catering, school kitchens, all of those traditional areas where you have quite a difference between male and females being employed are all outsourced within Herefordshire. So we don't have the exposure to the risk in that. There is another element of the equal pay claim that is around that. So for some of those roles in Birmingham, the refuse collection teams are a good example. They are paid to do a round of work. So if they finish that early, they historically are allowed to go home early. Whereas clearly if you're in an environment where you're providing school meals or a care environment, you don't have that opportunity. So there's another complication in the Birmingham situation where the equal pay claim is looking at. But I can assure you that we don't have those arrangements here, so therefore we're not exposed to the risk of that type of equal pay claim. Clearly, if an employee feels that their pay needs to be reviewed, we have a process for policy. That's there for all staff. We're not aware of any of those claims coming through, but clearly people don't do so. I'm very comfortable that we have a very minimal risk to pay, and actually we've been having a dialogue with Grant Thornton this week on the very same issue around that, and Tracy Sampson, head of HR, has given that assurance again to. So it's a very valid point, but we are structurally a very different arrangement with our workforce.
And I think that's very comforting and encouraging. Anybody else have any supplemental question? I think it's a very valid thing at the moment. It's so much in the headline and had such a significant impact in Birmingham.
So, well, just to go on from that, Andrew, then we can always safely assume that all the posts that are advertised throughout the council are scaled correctly, and that on no occasion would anybody be ever underpaid for the work that they do. I felt that would be the case, and you could confirm that, yeah?
I'm very happy to confirm that. That's our position. We have a very clear grading process, very clear selection processes. Clearly, that doesn't rule out if somebody feels that it's inappropriate. There is a mechanism for them to query that and have it reassessed if they want to. So I'm going to give that assurance.
I wonder, Andrew, can you remember when the equal pay legislation came in? It was some years ago.
The honest answer is no. I'd have to check on that. I don't have that information in my head, but I can get a written response to you. It's probably the best way of checking that. And what this council
just let me know by email. It's okay. I didn't make this formally.
Yeah. I have a
I think it's
feeling
2010, actually 2010, but we'll check.
I have a feeling it came in 2004, 2005. That's I think that's something I heard, but I couldn't swear to.
Okay, good. So the final item is the work programme. So we have a spreadsheet which is quite complicated to read. So Jen has put together something much more simple, which hopefully you've got a copy in front of you. And it just shows the items on the agenda of the next 1, 2, 3, 5 meetings so far. And hopefully there are nothing glaring things on here which does anybody want to add anything?
Only that the meeting in October looks quite full.
Yes, yeah, well, yes. Yeah, well, we hope it will be full with the accounts, yes. Okay, so we're happy with that support.
It isn't, there's not much to talk about.
Well, we thought about moving some from November to October. We can move some around.
Yeah.
And then we talked to Sean about that, and there are a couple he can actually get ready just in case they're needed at that time. Okay. Right, I think we're in the meeting mode.
I was just going to thank Dan, because all the meetings are already in my calendar. I went to put them in on my phone and they're already sat there. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll bring the meeting to an end. The next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, the 24th of